Let's get the matchups to watch in the Eagles and the Rams game. NFL Insider KC Joyner, the footballscientist.com. We'll get one thought on every game in just a second. But, Casey, as we welcome you in on a Friday edition of the Sports Bash as we do each week, let's take a look at this game. The Eagles' offensive line was a mess last week in terms of 8 sacks. Now, breaking down some of that tape, we had Brian Baldinger on earlier this week. He said, the line wasn't as bad as they looked. It was more communication. The running backs missed some stuff, but they got their hands full with Brockers and, of course, that guy named Donald. So let's start there. Eagles line against this Rams front. How do you see it?
I would agree from at least a run blocking perspective, when I did my studies on run blocking, that the Eagles' issues last week were not offensive line centric as much as they were. There were running back, or there were tight end problems, wide receiver problems. There were other people that were missing blocks. So Kelsey had some problems, and they put him in one-on-one situations. He had a couple of times where he got shoved into the backfield. So, but then again, they're not going to have him singled up against Donald in any event. They'll always put 2 on him. So I'm not worried so much from that perspective there, and it's just going to have to be where you're going to have to do a lot of trap plays like they did last week. You're going to have to do a lot of quick passes. This may be a week where we always question why they don't try and run the ball more. This may be a week where you have to rely on your quick passing game and don't want them to go after that line, because I think the Eagles can get some things done offensive line-wise, but I think that they're better off trying to do just quick stuff and limiting what the offensive line has to do.
Getting Lane Johnson back has to help there. Obviously, Driscoll did not play awful, but Lane Johnson, just getting a guy back that's a veteran like that, how that kind of helps out everybody across the line.
I think it does, because Goddard actually had one of his worst run blocking games that I've seen him have, and I think in part because he does better when if you line him up against Lane Johnson or next to Lane Johnson, he knows I only have to do so much blocking. There's certain things that he has to be careful of. I think he was worried too much about having to do more than just take his guy on. I think he was trying to, as Belichick says, just do your job. Don't worry about doing somebody else's. And I think he had some concerns there. So I think it could have a double positive effect in that it'll make Johnson better and it'll make Goddard a lot better than he was too.
Eagles secondary Slay. Last year we would talk every week about how bad they were. Slay played well. Maddox played well. Nickel Roby Coleman. They were going up against Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and company. How do you like that one?
I'm worried about Van Jefferson, actually, the number 3 receiver for the Rams, who didn't get targeted that often last week, but he looked great in camp, and he's somebody who, if I'm looking up him against Roby Coleman, I think the Eagles can hold up in that matchup there, but it's one of those things where I think that would be a matchup they would go after. When Roby Coleman was only targeted twice last week, but he gave up 2 completions for 30 yards, so that's not a good start. I mean, Slay only gave up 5 yards per target on 6 targets, so I'd be more worried about Van Jefferson versus Roby Coleman than anything else. But again, I think Roby Coleman can hold up better than he did last week.
The Rams ran the ball 40 times last week. How would the Eagles' defense match up against a 40 rushing attack this week?
I think that they'll be able to do, if we talk about this every time we talk about the Eagles, is that they've got that one-gap defense, and they get upfield, and they disrupt plays, and they did that last week. They only allowed, I think it was 28% good blocking rate last week against Washington. I mean, it just dominated the front. The problem was and the problem always is when they, you've got that aggressive defense. If the other team hits a long gainer, then it tends to be a long game. Now, last week, Gibson had that one run where he got 20, but he could have had even more if he didn't trip over his receiver. He just tried to make a cut back and tripped on him. The Rams, that's the only person Washington had last week who could do breakaways. The Rams have all of their backs are capable. I mean, Cam Akers is a much better breakaway back than I think Gibson is, and Malcolm Brown can hit some long runs. Even Darrell Henderson, their 3 can get some long runs. So if I'm the Eagles, I have to be very worried about that you can win your share of blocks in this matchup, but if they get some big gainers, they're going to get some 20-yard gainers. So they got to make sure those corners and safeties are coming up and stopping those plays.
All right, the Eagles pass rush, they're getting everybody back. Hargrave's back. Looks like Graham's going to go. Looks like Barnett's going to go. They're still pretty good even, without those guys. Hargrave did not play last week. They had 3 sacks. So the Eagles front up against the Rams offensive line.
I like the Eagles front. I have trouble grading the Rams offensive line because they only threw 4 deep passes last week. 4 passes that went 15 or more yards downfield, air yard wise. They only threw 4 passes, and they threw 1 in the first half. They had 3 in the second half, and they did 2 of 4 for 61. So they didn't use their vertical game that often. I don't think they're as good of a pass blocking team as they are a run blocking team. But when you have only that much to go on, I don't know. I would think the Eagles will be able to get some kind of a pass rush, but it's tough to say because I just don't know where the Rams are pass blocking-wise right now.
When you look at the Eagles' ability to throw the ball, they had trouble last week because of the sacks, but is this a week that Carson Wentz could possibly bounce back and have a big week? Is there, are there plays to be had in the Rams secondary?
There are plays to be had in the Rams secondary. Troy Hill's probably their best corner. Actually, not the best corner, but Troy Hill has had the best metrics. Ramsey's been hit or miss, and I wonder what they're going to do with Ramsey. Because if you look at the matchup, you'd say, okay, matchup-wise, he would probably face Rager, but I would bet they'd put him on Jackson. And Hill is good, but Hill's also kind of an aggressive corner, and I think you could get some big plays there. And I'd be really curious to see the Rams' number 3 cornerback is a guy named Darius Williams. If he's facing Ward, that's going to be a place they might be able to go after. And they also put in Jordan Fuller. They put the Rapp was their safety last year, but Fuller evidently outplayed him in camp so much that he dominated the snaps last week. And McVay even said, "This is our," basically he didn't say Fuller's going to be our starter because they'll probably use 3 safety sets and they'll get Rapp in there too. But Fuller is their guy. But he's still a first-year guy. And if I'm looking at Ertz/Goddard going up against somebody like him, that's a target that's a matchup I want to go target to see how good is Fuller in coverage because he didn't get tested that much last week after Jarwin went down with the injury.
All right, the Eagles took a lot of deep shots down the field. They didn't connect. They had the one to Rieger. That was about it. But Deshaun Jackson, they anticipate getting him more. Rieger, the Eagles, can they take shots down the field and connect?
I think they can, and last week they got to a point, as we talked about earlier this week, they got to a point where everything was funneled through Jackson. They basically weren't throwing deep passes anywhere else. They just didn't trust the rookies. And I think if you get back to where you can trust the rookies again and say, hey, this is where we're going to go. In fact, I'd like to see with Ramsey and such, Ramsey got the contract, and he's great corner and things. He's been very inconsistent the past couple of years. I mean, he'll take games off. I don't think this is a game he'd take off. But if I'm the Eagles, I definitely want to test him because if he has one of his off games, then you can send Jackson at him deep too. And then if you do that, now you've got Troy Hill, again, good corner, but still kind of untested. You've got him and Darius Williams. You've got these untested guys in the Rams secondary, and I would want to go see if I can go vertical on them because they've got some talent, but so do the Eagles.
All right, he's KC Joyner. We'll get his pick on that game. Give me one area where you think there could be the difference in this game.
I think the difference in this game is that if the Eagles can keep those long gainers on the ground, if they can keep those in check, they'll win more than their share of their run blocking plays up front. I think that they can actually stop the Rams' rushing attack. If they can do that and force Goff to go vertical, then I think there's some chances for some interceptions. So as long as they can make sure that the Rams don't get big plays in the running game, they'll end up having the funnel their offense through Goff more than they should, and that could be a big difference.
All right, time for one thought on every game with NFL Insider KC Joyner, thefootballscientist.com. Don't forget his pay dirt and his pick watch as well, as we're going to get his pick watch, his confidence on these games. We'll go through the schedule and get one thought on every game. First off, give us a thought on the Thursday Night Football game, Bengals and Browns.
Bengals and Browns, the big thing was Cincinnati played, I think, quite well. I think Burrow's looking like he's going to be the Rookie of the Year guy, or at least the top candidate. But Cleveland, they've got 2 great backs. OBJ finally steps up. Their passing game started to look good. Cleveland's starting to play a little bit more to their talent level. They might be a team that could go 8-8 this year.
8-8. That's exciting for the Browns fans. All right, that's Giants and Bears. We got 2 legendary franchises here, old school ones. Bears came back from down last week big. Trubisky brought them back. Giants fell on Monday night, obviously. So can the Bears make it 2 in a row?
I think people are the Giants short because, sure, they didn't play. They look bad against the Steelers in some ways, but Daniel Jones threw for 279 yards and 2 TDs against the most talented defense in the league. New York's going to be much better in the ground game this year. The Bears give up 4.8 yards to rush versus Detroit, and Barkley bounces back big. So I think New York is actually going to win this game. Only got a confidence level of 2, though.
Yes, they got to have a better game out of Barkley. That's evident. Atlanta traveling to Dallas. Dallas struggled the other night. I thought their defense played a little poor, but offensively only 17 points on the board against this Rams defense. Atlanta put up a whole lot of points, weren't able to get the win, so it makes an interesting matchup here.
It is. I think the Atlanta's defense, their secondary, might be the worst in the league. They gave up 7.9 yards per attempt and 4 TD passes to Seattle. I think Dallas, with that trio of wide receivers, I think they might be able to do even better than that, or at least as well as that. Atlanta's got a good offense, but Dallas's defense is better than they showed last week. In fact, remember, they didn't give up that many points last week either. So I got Dallas with a confidence level 7 in this one.
Confidence level 7. All right, Detroit going to Green Bay. Detroit fell apart at home. Green Bay looked scary on offense last week.
They did, and Detroit is going to be missing. Justin Coleman got put on IR, and they're also going to be missing another cornerback. So they're down 2 cornerbacks, and Okudah, their rookie, is going to be playing in his first game. So they've got some problems in their secondary. And you look at Green Bay and how they looked last week with that passing game. Lazard and Valdez-Scantling to go along with Adams. It's not just Adams anymore. Earlier this week, I picked Green Bay with the confidence level 2, but I'm adding in the Lions' secondary issues. I'm going to move that confidence level up to 4.
One thought every game. KC Joyner's with us. Jacksonville, a surprise win last week. Now they're on the road. Tennessee, this is a big boy game here.
It is. In Jacksonville, they got the win, but when you look at their everything metrically, they just, Minshew only threw 20 passes. He completed 19, but they only threw 20 passes. They gave up 445 yards. They're not that good of a team. They eked out a win last week because of some mistakes. I think Tennessee makes those same mistakes, but their kicking question marks only give me a confidence level 5 in this one.
Go to Indianapolis. They were the losers in the Jacksonville game. They get to come back home. Minnesota had a tough one at home last week, giving up over 40 in the game against Green Bay. So, you like Minnesota on the road in Indianapolis this week? Indy needs this one coming off that ugly loss to Jacksonville.
They do, but, man, the Vikings, 522 yards and 43 points. Mike Zimmer's defense is better than that. That's probably the worst showings he's had in Minnesota, probably in his entire career, actually. Phillip Rivers made some errors last week, but he completed 78% of his throws, and he has the 6th highest net yards per attempt in Week 1. So they can go vertical. They can take advantage of some of those Minnesota defensive weaknesses. I got the Colts, but only by a confidence level 3.
All right, Buffalo's going to Miami. Big game for Buffalo here. Everybody's got, expectations for them. If you have expectations, you got to be able to handle Miami, who's not very good, but you got to go on the road to do it. These are the kind of games that if you're to be taken seriously, you get games against weaker opponents on the road.
Flores showed that even though his offense didn't do anything last week, he could still get that team to play well and to stay in the contest even late in the contest. I think it'll be the same thing here, but, Miami's offense, they only averaged 4.8 yards per play and 3.2 yards per rush. Fitzpatrick had 3 interceptions. Josh Allen had his first career 300-yard passing game, and he gained 57 yards on the ground, so Buffalo's got some offense going with it. I think that if this is at home, I'd give Buffalo confidence level 10. I'm going to drop it to 8 because they're on the road.
All right, he likes Buffalo big there, confidence level 8. San Francisco traveling across the country. Jets were in Buffalo last week. They get to come home now and face a 49er team that's probably not too happy after losing the home opener.
No, and to their division rival, too. Arizona is a team on the rise, though, so I'm not knocking the 49ers too much for that, because I think that game said more about where Arizona is than that San Francisco's taking a big step back. The Jets, they're just in terrible shape in offense without Bell now, and they allowed Josh Allen to throw for 300 yards last week. I think San Francisco wins this game fairly handily, confidence level 7.
San Francisco, confidence level 7. All right, let's go to Pittsburgh, where the Steelers look good on Monday night. They take on Denver, who did not look so good on Monday night. So 2 Monday night teams now meeting in week number 2.
Yeah, they are, and the problem for the Steelers is that they've got DeCastro, the right guard, is going to miss another game. They just put his backup Wisniewski on IR. They were going to be missing their right tackle, so their entire right side of their offensive line is in terrible shape. The only thing is that Denver is also going to be missing Philip Lindsay. Bouye, the cornerback, is out, and now the Steelers are going to get Connor back. They still have the best defense in the league talent-wise, and it's a road matchup for Denver. I'm just looking at it. Denver's got a couple paths to victory if they can exploit the bad Steelers offensive line, but I still got the Steelers the confidence level of 8.
Carolina's offense looked good, defense not so good. Tampa Bay, tough to read there. Brady did not play well, but he comes back home. Do you like Brady to bounce back against this Carolina team?
6.1 yards per play and 372 yards he gave up to the Raiders. The Panthers did. Mike Evans was not on the injury report at the end of the week, so he's back to being fully healthy. Gronk just looked a little rusty. He'll work through that. They still have Howard. They still have Scotty Miller to fill in for Godwin, who is going to miss this game with concussion. I'm adding all those factors in together, and Tampa's got a very good defense. They held up very well against the Saints last week. I think they'll hold Carolina down, so I've got them with a confidence level 6.
All right, let's go to Arizona. Now, they had a nice win in week number 1. They're back home now. Washington had a nice win in week number 1. So 2 teams that really surprised people, they match up in week number 2.
They do. Washington's offense did not look anywhere. They won 27-17, but we mentioned before that Eagles' defense did quite well against the run, and I still don't trust the Washington passing game at all. I like to be more confident in Arizona, but I'm not convinced of their consistency, so I'm only going to pick them with a confidence level 7, though.
All right, let's go to the Chargers, who are a winner in week 1 over the Bengals. They come home, but they got their hands full against the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs.
They do. The Chargers last week, they had their O-line issues. I think they injuries all across the offensive line. In fact, their center's out now for the season, too, so they still have those, and they're not going to be able to block Chris Jones. They decided last week, though, they're going to run the ball 39 times, and they could do that against the Cincinnati offense that wasn't as good last week as it was yesterday, but I don't think they're going to have that same type of success against Kansas City. So Kansas City's won 11 against last 12 against the Chargers, and they haven't lost a road game to the Bolts since 2013, so I'm going to pick them at the conference over 8.
Baltimore is at Houston. Houston didn't look good on Thursday night in Week 1. They'll get to come home now. Baltimore looked really good last week. I thought Lamar Jackson maybe even improved from what we saw in his MVP season, but they really mixed it around and played really good defense. Looks like Houston, even though they're home, they could be staring at 0-2.
They could be. I still have a lot of faith in their talent because when I'm looking at these picks, I lean a lot towards how talented the team is. I don't think they played to their talent level last week, and I don't know that they'll do that this week. But when Baltimore has to travel on the road and they're facing a talented team like that, I still think they're going to win the contest. But I'm only going to pick them with a confidence level of 4 because I have a feeling Houston's going to play a lot better this week than they did in Week 1.
New England, this one's interesting. They're going to Seattle. No 12th man. Got to travel all the way across the country, though. I mean, depending on what the weather's like out there with the fires out in Seattle. But Cam Newton only threw 15 times going up against Russell Wilson. I mean, this is a really good and intriguing matchup, but maybe too much Seattle here?
Yeah, I think it's going to be too much Seattle. I mean, New England, they went 42 rush attempts last week. It was over 2, it was more than a 2-to-1 ratio for rush versus pass. Seattle's got a good run defense. They're going to want to and have to throw the ball more, and I just don't think that they have the capacity to do that. I think Seattle can score enough points to make New England have to throw the football, and New England just doesn't have the receiving core. The receiving core is besides Edelman, they don't have anybody. Even Harry's just nothing that I'm concerned about from that perspective. So Seattle, only a confidence level of 3 just because Belichick can do things with his game plans.
All right, then, of course, on Monday, we will have KC back to talk about the Monday night game between the Saints and Vegas. You can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. You can hear New England, Seattle, Sunday night on 97.3 ESPN. You can hear Kansas City and the Chargers after the Eagles and the Rams on 97.3 ESPN. Another triple header Sunday for you here. Turn us on, leave us on. 3 games Sunday, 1 on Monday, every Thursday night, Monday night, and Sunday night game here. And the football scientist is here, as always, to give us his pick. All right, Eagles, Rams, who wins and why?
I hate to say this because, I like to pick the Eagles when I can, but the Rams are playing very well. I think they're going to be able to dominate the offensive line play. I think that Philadelphia's offensive line is going to have some problems, and I see that matchup. I just look at that offensive line versus the Rams' defensive front. I just don't see very many positive things coming out of that. So I've got the Rams winning this one with a confidence level of 7.
Confidence level of 7, too. So It doesn't sound like you think this is going to be close.
Yeah, I think the Rams could win by double digits. Again, the Eagles, I think they're going to have to be very creative in their play. We're going to see a lot from Peterson this week if he's going to have to come with a creative game plan to keep this one close, because I just think that offensive line problem is just something that the Eagles are going to have a lot of trouble with. And can Carson Wentz short passes way to keep them close? Maybe, but I just really think the Rams have more pass to victory.
Let me ask you this, get your opinion on this. How much are you factoring in no crowds? The Eagles are at home, much different team. Teams like that, Seattle, teams that have that home field advantage. What is the no fans? How are you factoring that in?
I believe road teams were 500 last week, or they were very close to that. I think it was. I know there were 6-6 out of the first 12, and I believe they won 2 of the last 4. So I think that there is no home field advantage right now, unless you're having to travel to. If you're going to Denver, Denver had a bit of a home field advantage because you're having to go to the altitude and such. But beyond that, and beyond the fact that teams, I am factoring in if teams have to travel and it's their first road game, which everything obviously has this year. If it's your first road game, that's the first time you're having to go through all these COVID protocols and such, and I think that presents something of a difficult. That's why I haven't had a 10 confidence level pick. Actually, I had one last week for Sunday, but I haven't had 10 confidence level picks just because of that. But I don't think the Rams are going to have any issues with that because they've been having to deal with a lot of COVID stuff anyway.
Casey, tell our listeners how they can get your information, where else they can find all your NFL work.
I'm at thefootballscientist.com, and I have a paid service that covers fantasy football. I do waiver picks, start-sit services, both for Thursday and for Sunday games. I give updates, and I have chats during the week to help people with their fantasy teams. You can use the word Gil for a 10% discount off of those. And I also am writing for NFLPickWatch.com. Go there and check out all my weekly NFL picks. I write the article on Thursday and then I update it for Sunday morning for the injuries.
He's KC Joyner. He's been with us for many a years, giving us great insight along the way. He'll be back on Monday. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. KC, enjoy the football.
Appreciate it, man.